Hello, hello, everyone. It is Friday. It is alive. We are at it again to talk about all things that are going on. And man, oh man, today was a day, huh? There's a lot of stuff going on today. We got inventory going up. We've got buyers that are kind of sitting there not doing. Some are doing stuff, some are not. Why are they not doing it? We're going to talk about all of that. And to talk about all of this with me is my friend Joe.
Hi. Hey,
Hi,
Sean.
Joe. How are you?
I'm doing well. And
Good.
one more time, let's give it up for Friday. I'm so glad it's Friday. I feel like this, I don't know if everybody's in the same boat as me, but this has been like a 5-day week that feels like it's been 8 days.
I know.
And I don't know, I think maybe it has a lot to do with updating clients and keeping people informed on all of the developments, shall we say.
I know.
In the
I
financial
failed. Yeah.
market.
I failed to say, like, if you're watching, I always like to know where you're watching from. So add
Yes.
that in the comments for sure. But
Yeah.
no, I agree with you. There's so much going on. There's a million questions from everybody. I feel
Yep.
like what's going on in the market? What's happening? What do you see?
Yep.
You know, how is this affecting this? You know, all these people are trying to piece the puzzle pieces together.
Yep.
I don't know. You can.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough, and normally this is really common, and I'm sure as an agent, you probably get this whenever you're out and about with family, with friends. They're always like, "Hey, Sean, how's the market? What's
Right.
going on?" All this
Yeah.
stuff. Like, this is normal
Yeah.
for agents to be approached by friends, clients, colleagues, people, and just say, "Hey, what's going on?"
Absolutely.
And now it's even more so at the front of mind, because it's not necessarily even what's going on with housing. It's how is what's going on going to affect housing. A lot of people want to know.
100%.
Because either you're a homeowner and therefore you have vested interest, or if you're a home buyer, you've got vested interest. So it really does end up applying to a lot of people. I mean, even people that rent want to know what's going to happen, because what happens could potentially affect rent prices and things like that. So a lot of interesting developments that affect a lot of people across the board, which is why it's so important to discuss.
I know. I agree. Sandy B, watching from Utah. Awesome. Where are you in Utah? I'm curious. I love Utah. It's a beautiful state. Love it. I agree with you. It's one of those things that, I mean, to your point, like the renters are asking because oftentimes they're renting because they want to buy, but they're not buying yet,
Exactly.
So it's like, what's going to happen? Is the market going to crash?
Yep.
And is it going to make it easier for me to buy Cottonwood Heights? I don't know where that is. I wish I did. I'm sure I know where it might be around something. But welcome. Thanks for watching. So we are going to get into it. I have an article here that let's talk about it. More homes are finally hitting the spring market, but will buyers take the plunge? Yeah, that's the big question. I mean, because I feel like last week we talked about kind of our market here a little bit more, kind of, I don't know what word I'm looking for, specifically to Arizona, and our inventory is rising, and we have shifted into a buyer's market here. But it's not everywhere. In some cities, we're still technically a seller's market, although slight. I always like to caution everybody when I say, "Oh, it's still a seller's market." It is slight. You cannot ask whatever you want for your house. But demand is low. But I was talking to the person I had on last week, who's Tina from the Crawford Report, who's amazing, a good friend of mine. And I said, the thing about the demand that I have a hard time with, I see it from the data points, right? That our demand is low. However, I know all the buyers that I'm helping right now, they want to buy.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point, because even though demand may have tempered a little bit and it's not so voracious as it has been the last few years, the people that are committed to buying right now, the ones that are like, listen, I know the tariff thing might mix some things up. I know interest rates aren't super favorable, although they're improving, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit.
We will get there. Yep.
But the fact of the matter is the buyers that are out there right now are going to be some of the most serious and determined buyers we've probably seen since, 2004 and 5, when the market was really frothy pre-Great Recession. So the buyers that are out there are if they're in it right now, they're committed.
Yeah. I will say this: they are in it, they're committed. They're still frustrated.
Yeah. Well, for sure. I mean, they're still facing huge affordability challenges, very high prices. And even the committed buyers that still remain, they're committed, but it's a more, I believe, a savvy group of buyers, and they're not just going to buy something to fill the void, which is what we saw in 2020, 21, and into 22.
We were all in FOMO at that. Yeah, all the buyers were FOMO at that point.
Yep. It was just whatever. It's got a roof. It's got walls. Here, take my money. And now it's much more, what do the comps say? What's the value? What's the real value of it? And is it really worth the $4,000 a month I'm going to have to pay? So
yeah, absolutely. All right, let's take a look and see what this article says. So it says it's springtime and for sale signs are popping up in front of homes across the country. But with so much uncertainty in the economy, it's an open question whether the spring housing market will be hot or not. Let's check out the forecast. So mortgage rates and home prices are both high. It's certainly not the cheapest time to buy a home. The average 30-year mortgage rate is 6.65%, down a bit from January, but still pretty high. Most analysts predict that mortgage rates will linger around this level for now, especially since the Federal Reserve has indicated it's unlikely to cut interest rates until later this year. I'm going to butcher that name, so I'm just going to. Chief economist at the real estate analyst firm Cohatley says market volatility could bring down mortgage rates. That's because mortgages typically follow the yield, the 10-year Treasury bond, which are affected by investors' worries about the economy. Because of the concerns around the slowing job market, because of concerns maybe around the risks of a recession, Hep says. But there are other factors keeping mortgage rates high, among them inflationary policies like tariffs. Another deterrent for buyers is the elevated cost to buy a home. The median home price has shot up 47% in just the last 5 years. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's so crazy. Good news for buyers, more homes are hitting the market. So last year was the slowest existing home sales market since 1995. That was right before I got my real estate license, by the way.
That was right before I went into kindergarten.
Oh boy. It wasn't that people didn't want to buy. There simply wasn't much for sale. The biggest question now is whether a frozen market can begin to thaw. Signs suggest that things are starting to shift, with more inventory coming on the market. In February, there was 17% more existing homes for sale compared to last year, followed by a 10% increase in new listings in March compared to a year ago. In the last couple years, as mortgage rates climbed, there's been concern about a lock-in effect causing homeowners with low interest rates to never move. But the recent uptick in listings suggests that as time goes on, people do end up moving. More listings should translate into more sales. Return to office mandates are also spurring some folks to move closer to cities now that they've got to be in the office several days a week. Increasing inventory will put buyers on better footing, giving them more options and more leverage. For sellers, more competition could mean they have to be more flexible on price. That's already starting to happen. Over 17% of active listings included price reductions in March, according to Realtor.com, the highest for any March since 2016. Economic uncertainty clouds the forecast. So this person is trying to become a homeowner. For the past year, he and his wife have been looking for a home in Fairfield County, Connecticut. A few weeks ago, they offered $161,000 over a home's asking price, but their bid still wasn't enough. This week, they lost again. Theirs was one of 17 offers. That's crazy. He said, I'm a little nervous. All the various tariffs, he said, what's going to happen, what's not going to happen, just what we were talking about before. Yep. Maybe just waiting and seeing for another year or two would be in our best interest. Others may be making the same choice. Pending listings, that is, homes under contract, fell 5.2% year over year in March, according to data from Realtor.com. Those who are worried about losing their job might not want to commit to a big down payment right now. They tend to stay put. They end up not moving unless they have to.
Yeah.
Also adding to the uncertainty is the cost of homeownership that used to be pretty steady, like homeowners insurance or HOA fees that have skyrocketed in some places. That can make buying a home feel more like a gamble than it used to.
Absolutely.
On top of everything else, I'm going to leave this alone just because I've talked about this before, and we can get into that.
Yeah.
Here, really quick, Shannon. Hi, Sean and Joe, watching from Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome.
Hello.
So I mean, back to all this, I don't disagree with any of it, really. I mean, I think that
some strong points here.
Very strong, right? What we're seeing in our market here is that we do have increased inventory, which again, in the grand scheme of things, you would say, well, this is great for the buyer, right? They've got more options.
Right.
Problem right now that I'm seeing is that either the home has been really well maintained, has been updated. And when I say updated, not just the interior, because that's what I'm running into a lot here. The interior has been updated, but the roof is still original, meaning it's 20 plus years old, or the air conditioning unit is original, which is 20 plus years old.
Right.
And buyers are looking at that going, okay, I like all the interior that they did, but there's still some really big maintenance costs that I'm going to have to incur when I buy the house.
Yeah.
And there's a really big push-pull right now with buyers and sellers for that.
I believe it. And especially in a market and climate like you're in, where it's exposed to such high heat.
Yeah.
Roofs they're sitting in 110 degrees, 120 degrees. And on the surface of the roof, it's even much hotter. So it's no surprise that in your really, really hot, dry climates are almost as hard on a roof as the cold, wet climates are. So I could definitely see, a buyer that's walking into a house, it's got a 20, 25-year-old roof. And it's not like here in Southern California where it's temperate, it's pretty dry all the time, where, hey, it's 20 years old, you can get another 10 years out of it. You can save up, recoup the cost, plan for the expense, and then do it down the line. And oh gosh, air conditioning. I think air conditioning might be more important than a roof in Phoenix.
It is during the summer.
Yeah. So, wanting to go into a house with a 20-year-old AC, and especially now with a lot of the legislation around air conditioning and refrigerants, they're not cheap.
They're not cheap. And that we just replaced both of our air conditioning units on our house last year.
Yeah.
After the summer. Yeah. Because we had 25-year-old air conditioning units.
Yep.
And they were working, but every summer there seemed to be something that went wrong, and we could fix it. And it was, relatively inexpensive and everything. And finally we just said, you know what? We just need to do it. We replaced our roof 2 years after we moved into our house. But this is the stuff that just, when we replaced, I will never forget this. When we replaced our roof, they're loading like all the stuff up this thing, to put it on the roof. And I looked at my husband and I said, this is the least sexy home improvement that you can possibly do.
Yeah.
The least.
No, you're right.
But
and that's
so necessary.
You're right. And that's one of the things that when I take buyers to a house, one of the first things I do when I research that property before I go show it is, especially based on the year built, what are the infrastructure upgrades that have been done, right? Mm-hmm. Has anybody done windows? Talk about an unsexy upgrade. drop 20 grand in for a new sewer line. That's
the new thing. I'm not kidding. That is my new thing. I've been doing it now for probably 2 years. Is I have every one of my buyers, when we go through the inspection, I always talk to them about having a sewer scope done. And it is saved. Because I know where you are, some of your houses are old.
That's what I was going to say is you're in the area now where a lot of your 60s and 70s homes are, and even into the 80s now are getting to the point where it's like, what material did they use? Where I'm at, we have a lot of homes built 40s, 50s, 60s, a ton. I'm sitting in a 1955. Right. When I bought my house, one of the first things I did was sewer scope. In escrow, because I wanted to know, hey, if it's 1955 and this thing is hopefully it's not clay, hopefully it's at least cast iron. Yeah. But even if it's cast iron, it's been in the ground for 70 years. Right. And the last thing you want to do is buy a home and then you're in for 3 months. And not only does your plumbing back up, but it backs up with sewage.
I know.
Which is, again, we're on the unsexy thing.
Right.
Doesn't get much worse than that.
Yeah, I get it. So Sean, any rules of thumb or guidance on questions to ask about air conditioning for Phoenix homes? Moving from Washington State and can use some specific guidance. So the biggest thing is, how old is the air conditioning unit? I would say that's the first question. And then when you get into the inspection, this is what I always tell my buyers. When we get into the inspection, the inspector is going to do a visual inspection of everything. Check for leaks, make sure that it's wired, like the exterior of the wire. It is just a visual inspection. When we get that inspection back, if there is something glaring that is saying to me, we need to have now a licensed HVAC contractor come out and take a look at that, that unit. Then I'm going to have them come out and take a look at that unit. But oftentimes the inspector can find the majority of things, that are wrong. Like if there's a temperature split difference, that usually means that you need some Freon in the air conditioning unit. If the Freon line is not covered with the insulation outside, that means that you're going to lose a lot of coolant, or not coolant, but you're going to lose a lot of the cooling because of that line that comes from the condensing unit on the outside of the house into the house. If that is not covered in the insulation, you're going to lose a lot of cooling from there. There's just a lot of things that the inspector can see, but they're not licensed. They're not licensed contractors, one, and two, they're not licensed in all these things that they fix. So that they check. They literally do a visual inspection. So the biggest thing that I always tell people is we need to get that inspector out there to take a look at the unit. And then from that's going to tell me whether or not I suggest to you, I think we need to get an HVAC person to come out and take a look at it. Because an HVAC person is going to come out, they're going to take the panel off. They're going to look inside. Another thing that's not uncommon to hear about in an inspection for an air conditioning unit is the unit in the attic. There's a condensation pan underneath it. It is not abnormal to have rust stains in that condensation pan. It does not mean it's terrible. It does not mean it's bad, anything like that. It doesn't mean that the air conditioning unit is totally leaking. But during our monsoon season here, when we do get some humidity, you will get condensation that is pooling in there, and that pan keeps it from overflowing, and it goes out the side of the house. And there's I'm getting really in depth, and I'm sorry, but I hope this is helpful. There's two PVC pipes on the side of the house, one that's high and one that's low. The one that's low in the summertime during our monsoon season, it's normal to see that dripping with water. That's normal. That's the water that's coming out of that condensation pan. That's normal. If it's coming out of the high one, that's when you call your HVAC person and say something's wrong, because it's probably high, and that the regular line that it comes out of might be blocked. So then you could end up with a leak, and that could come through your attic. So I hope that was helpful. I know I can get in the weeds with this stuff just because I get these questions all the time. I have this crazy amount of, I feel like, useless knowledge sometimes, but it does come into play sometimes. So now I know to trigger a deeper look. Thank you for the detail. They're very helpful. You're welcome. I hope that was helpful.
And Sean, when you have inspections out there and you guys are inspecting the HVAC, and the inspector, kicks on the heater or kicks on the AC, do your inspectors typically do any type of temperature readings or infrared gun stuff? And so essentially at that point, the inspector has a good idea of how effective the cooling is of the unit. So that's a good indication of, its overall health, but that's not an indication of how much life is left.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, I 100% agree. And I mean, again, I always tell my clients that, just because the air conditioning unit is 20 years old, does it mean that it's going to die tomorrow? No. Especially if they can show us proof that it's been maintained year after year after year, are you going to get some life out of it still? You are. Do you need to kind of budget to replace that air conditioning unit sooner rather than later? Yeah. But I tell every one of them as well, I have never, ever, ever in my 27 years of doing this, I've never seen a seller replace an air conditioning unit. On the flip side, I have seen 30 plus sellers replace a roof.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So Sharon, she said, that's the problem I've been finding with used homes. Right now, the new builds are best option here. I have a love-hate relationship with the new builds.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
I'm with you.
I know. I mean, I know they look pretty and they're new, and you're like, oh, but then everything has a warranty and all of that. But I have helped a lot of people into new builds, and I'm always so frustrated at the end, and I always feel really bad usually at the end, because the home is not fully ready. They're being forced to close. They're going to be living with contractors and the subs in their house for the next 6 months, fixing things that have to be fixed that should have, in my opinion, should have been done before the house was delivered. So it's just, it's tough. And in all honesty, even though the stuff is new, there's still problems. Like until the house kind of gets broken in a little bit, for lack of a better word, you're going to have some issues still with a new build.
Yeah. And, you know, the new build is attractive because usually they can get really good financing options because you're going to use builder incentives and some builder lender. So I understand the allure that people have to draw. Like you said, they always look beautiful online, but keep in mind, you know, it's marketing, right? They're trying to sell you something just like anything else,
emotion.
Right?
You walk into the house and it's emotional. You're like, oh my God, I could see myself living here. Yeah.
Right. And so it's, you know, it's important to remember that, you know, they're trying to say something. And my one thing on new homes is don't let anyone talk you out of a home inspection on a new home. Oh, it's new. You don't need a home inspection. Could not be further from the truth. Could not be further from the truth. So make sure, Shannon, if you do go the new home route, if it is the product that works for you, don't let them talk you out of a home inspection, and think about getting your own agent to represent you, even with a new build.
Right. So here I have a client right now that's buying a new build. And we just did our first pre-drywall inspection. Came back with a lot of stuff on the list. And so now I'm saying, can we get pictures of everything that's fixed? And this is what they said to me. We don't usually do that. So then how do we know it's fixed before you put the drywall up?
Correct.
So now I'm pushing. I'm like, we need visual proof that these items that we've now provided to you with this inspection have been complete. Without that, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, my client and I have spoken multiple times, and I'm like, I'm going to be pushing hard on this, just so you know. I'm like, are you okay with that? He's like, I'm good with that.
Yeah. And you know, you got to realize that these homes, and nothing against these home builders or the actual people that build the homes, the labor, nothing against these people. Oftentimes, especially the laborers, are on very tight timelines, you know, being forced to work very, very quickly. Right. But, you know, a lot of the times with the new homes, it's more akin to an assembly line product than it is to a construction project. Now, you might think I'm crazy for saying that because you're like, no, Joe, they're constructing a house. It's a construction project. But the way that new homes are built and the way that new communities are built out, it's very assembly line, which is a good thing for speed, but can sometimes be a bad thing for quality.
Totally. So Sean says, oh yeah, I can attest to that. Had a brand new home built, had an inspection, even though they said unnecessary, found a water leak from the unseated wax ring on the toilet. I know.
Bingo. And that's a relatively small thing, but it's still, it's a water leak. Luckily it's very fixable, but imagine if that leak had been, oh, you know what? There was in the attic where the lines meet, there's a little bit of leak. There's a little leak there. Yeah. Okay, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem. I know. Yeah, Sean, had the head contractor told me, you don't want to know how the sausage is made. I know. You know what? What's funny is that whenever I'm there for the delivery part of the new home, like that final walkthrough, and you're with that project manager, usually you're walking them around they're walking around the house to show you the stuff and giving you the rolls of blue tape to blue tape everything. They're usually like, oh man, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm like, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Yeah. And so it's hard when you see this beautifully, developed product that you walk through in the model home, and then you see what you get. And it's not that the house isn't still beautiful, at all, but I had another client a few years ago that it was brutal. It was through COVID. So that was an added,
even harder,
pain. But I mean, her timeline got pushed back like 5 times. Oh. We had an inspector go to do the final inspection, and they knew that the inspector was coming. She had no oven. She had no microwave. She had no medicine cabinets. She didn't have a water heater in yet. She was supposed to be closing the following Wednesday.
Oh, the lender's never going to fund that.
Well, not just that. The inspector called me, and she's like, I can't do this.
Right.
The things for me to inspect aren't there.
Right.
So then I have to call, and but this is the reason you have a realtor, right? Because now I'm the one, I can be the bad guy.
Yeah. That's our job. Right. Fight for the client, right? Make sure.
Right.
And especially when you're doing something, I don't want to make our job sound adversarial, like we're, on the other side in a court case or anything like that. But when you are working with a major entity like a major builder, their concern and care is certainly not going to be the same as if you were working with a mom and pop seller. It's their one house, and they hired an agent, and everybody's working together to accomplish this. The builder just wants you to close the deal and get in the home, and that's it.
Totally. Not just that, the contract that you're signing with the builder kind of removes a lot of your ability to say, hold on, I'm not closing.
Yes. Yeah.
Versus in our resale contract, we can say that. We can say, time out. The items that you agreed to fix are not done.
Yep.
We are going to push the close. Now, there's some ramifications with that too, but still, I mean, it gives you way more leverage in that resale contract.
And that's why for the longest time, realtors have said, if you're buying a new home, you really should use an independent real estate agent, because I mean, you're walking into that sales office and you're saying, I want to buy your house. They're the seller. Mm-hmm. They're representing you. Mm-hmm. They're generating the contract. Mm-hmm. And guess what? None of it is going to be in your favor. No. You know, it might seem or look, or they might tell you, oh, this is good for you.
No. I mean, they're kind. I mean, I know a lot of new home salespeople, and they're very nice, and they, you know, they're helpful, you know, but the ultimate person that they represent is the buyer or the builder.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. So I know, long tangent, but it's the truth. I like answering those kinds of questions though. So keep them coming because it's helpful. I know that everybody has those kinds of questions. Like, what do I do if, okay. So we're going to shift over. Sorry. I'm looking at my, I want to look at this. Sorry. So this is an article out of realtor.com. Let me pull it up here. And this one says new listings surge into the market this week, but there's a holiday catch. So kind of the same type of stuff. But I mean, I just think it's interesting to see this. It's definitely happening in some places more than others relative, or I mean, as we could see in that last article that we just read, someone back in Connecticut, I mean, they're still getting 12 or 17 offers on one house. Yeah. That is not happening here. Is that happening for you, Joe?
You know, it's not to that extent for the most part. Every once in a while, we'll still have a property that's in a very buyable price point that, you know, a listing agent might price very aggressively to get that type of action. But that's not the case. We're still seeing most good properties receive multiple offers, but it's like 2 or 3 or maybe 4. Yeah. It's not crazy stuff. It's certainly not like the Northeast. I know, I mean, you know, another colleague that I go on a stream with who's back in Massachusetts, she's telling me all the time, she's like, we still don't have any homes for people to buy. Like inventory is tough out here. Yeah. And I think what we're seeing is we're seeing a return to the days of when we have a much more individualized local real estate market across the board. I mean, for 5 years, we're able to sit back and go, that's a hot market. That's a hot market. Everywhere's a hot market. It's hot everywhere. We don't even need to go local. We just know it's all crazy. Mm-hmm. And now I think what we're seeing now is like you said, you know, now in my area, you can't even just take Los Angeles, right? Now it's like, well, what part of Los Angeles? What city in Los Angeles are we talking about? And for the most part, generally things are still moving along, but there are some houses in some neighborhoods that are not. And I think we're going to continue to make our way back to that time again, where you really have to go, not even just local, but hyper local.
Well, and our market has always really been that way, where you really have to go hyper local. And then, you know, to your point, everybody went crazy, you know, insane for, you know, however many years through the COVID times. Right. And now we're kind of going back to Arizona or Phoenix as a whole is in a buyer's market. Mm-hmm. However, there are still some cities that are in a seller's market. However, the seller's market is pretty soft. Right. You know, and then there's ones that are in a full-on buyer's market, like really buyer's market. And if you're not really careful with your pricing, you are going to sit on the market. But overall, you know, and the reality is all of our homes are sitting on the market longer. All of them.
Which and a couple of caveats to that. Number one, sitting on the market longer, you know, we think, oh my God, they're sitting on the market. They're sitting. Well, they went from 7 days to 20 days.
Well, and this is what I was saying during the COVID times when people were like, oh, our days on market are 7 days. And I'm like, okay, let's be realistic. It's not 7 days. Yeah. It was a day. Yeah. It took that long for it to go, for them to actually put it in MLS that it was under contract. Right. So it's kind of an inflated 7 days. It's not 7 days. It was a day or 12 hours.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so people just need to realize that the whole like, oh, days on markets are climbing. Well, they're climbing from the lowest days on market we've ever seen in the history of real estate, when everything was selling in 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, whatever it was.
Right.
And additionally, on top of that, this is what people have been asking for. This is what we've been asking for. We've been asking for more inventory.
Exactly.
More inventory, right? It's going to settle pricing. It's going to alleviate some of the velocity and the veracity that buyers are moving at. And it's so funny because the moment inventory ticks up, people are like, oh God, it's a housing crash. And you're like, no. This is what we've all been asking for. This is okay. This is not a problem.
I know. It's the truth. I mean, everybody, as soon as how many people have been saying that our housing market was going to crash for the last 5 years? Every year it's crashing. The market is crashing.
Every day it's crashing.
It's crashing. All right, let's dive into this one. Okay. So as the spring market enters full swing, more sellers are warily coming off the sidelines to dip their toe in the market, even as mortgage rates remain stubbornly elevated and economic uncertainty abounds. Still, Realtor.com economists predict that market activity will be hamstrung by a combination of high costs and limited inventory in some regions as the best time to sell grows near. And that could spell bad news for aspiring first-time homebuyers on a budget. The market has shifted towards higher-priced homes selling as entry-level buyers are priced out of the market, which has led to record high down payments, said Realtor.com senior economic research analyst Hannah Jones. It is likely this trend will continue until housing affordability improves. Meanwhile, new listings increased by a stunning 31.2% this week compared to the same time last year, marking the 12th consecutive week of annual growth. But a closer look at the figures reveals that is not all it seems. And it has to do with Easter. According to Jones, the huge surge in new listings this week is due in part to low new listing activity during the same period last year, which coincided with Easter week 2024.
I see what they're saying. Interesting connection.
Yeah. Major holidays like Easter typically lead to low housing market activity, explains Jones. As a result, annual new listing growth is likely overstated and will fall back in line with recent trends next week. But even if the new inventory number is somehow artificially inflated by the annual comparison with last year's low activity holiday, it comes as a welcome boost for buyers looking for fresh options.
True.
Totally.
I would have never thought about that. And I didn't realize, that Easter is kind of this floating holiday.
Yeah.
And this time last year, it was Easter, which of course would cause people to not list their homes. That's
totally. Well, and you think about it, I tell people that all the time around big holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, all those holidays. I'm like, I would hold off.
Yeah. People are focused on that.
We either got to push you quickly and get you going and give you a little bit of momentum, right? Before we hit that holiday and everything kind of stalls, or we got to wait.
Yeah.
Totally.
Agree.
So inventory continued growth streak. A zoomed out look at all active listings for the week ending on March 29th shows that the number of homes for sale was up 32.3% compared to the same period a year ago, continuing a 73-week streak of annual gains. So that's a long time.
Yeah.
This year-over-year growth in inventory gives buyers more choices and encourages more competitive pricing among sellers. Even with these inventory gains, the number of homes on the market remains below pre-pandemic levels. This persistent supply gap is all but guaranteed to put upward pressure on prices in areas suffering from dearth of for sale properties. At the same time, the pace of the market has continued to be sluggish, with homes languishing unsold for 2 days longer than a year ago.
A whole 2 days longer, Sean.
That whole 2 days. We got to call the media. While this is a modest increase and is trending downward, it continues a long-standing trend that reflects buyers' hesitation amid high borrowing costs. The past few weeks saw the average rate on 30-year fixed home loans gradually rise before sliding to a 3-year week low of 6.64% during the week ending April 3rd. From the buyer's perspective, a slower market means they have a bit more time to make decisions without having to rush. The delay also offers them more breathing room to negotiate with sellers. Mm-hmm. Prices stay flat for the third straight week. For the third consecutive week, the national median list price was unchanged from a year ago, continuing a 44-week streak where prices have either stayed flat or ticked down year over year. Now, I just want to draw your attention to this. This is saying the national median list price. So that's a big tell. That's the list price. That's not the sales price.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't want to say meaningless.
Yeah, but kind of.
Definitely less meaningful, shall we say.
But here's what I read into that, right? Sellers hopefully have understood that our market is no longer like increasing drastically.
Yep.
So they're not pricing their houses as high. I hope that's what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jones notes that the stability of the prices suggests that they are holding steady in the face of an adjusting market that is seeking to find its footing amid higher borrowing costs and growing home inventory. Price per square foot, a measure that reflects changes in the size of homes on the market, rose 1.2% year over year. This upward trend means that while overall prices have not moved much, the value of homes where their size is factored in has edged up. Meanwhile, the share of homes with a price cut climbed by 1.1 percentage points, a sign that sellers are grasping for the price point that would make the buyers sit up and pay attention. And that, I feel like, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You know, it's interesting how they reference the metric price per square foot. And I just want to get your thoughts on this, Sean.
Yeah.
What do you think about the metric of price per square foot when you're comparing valuation or pricing of properties?
I think it's only one metric that I look at.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a metric that I look at. Is it the metric that I determine the price of the house? No.
Right. Yeah.
It is not the end all be all.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I've got to look at the neighborhood as a whole. I've got to look at the house. I've got to look at the price per square foot. I've got to look at the how the house is maintained, how the house is, what are the finishes. Like there's so many things. Where's the lot located within the subdivision? Does it have a view? Does it not? I mean, there's so many other factors.
I'm glad that you listed all that, because that's the reason. Those reasons right there are why I don't like using price per square foot, because I feel like, to me, it only factors in size, price. That's it. And there's no other indicators. And every once in a while, I'll get a buyer that goes, Joe, I see the average price per square foot in Claremont, the area that's where I work. The average price per square foot in Claremont is X. So I don't want to pay more than this for that house. And I'm like, no, but you don't understand is this home is on a half acre and all the other ones are on a quarter acre.
Right.
This one is on a cul-de-sac. All the others that you're comparing to are on a busy street. There's many, many more things that go into evaluating the property than the price per square foot, unless it's a very, very, very generic townhome HOA, where it's like we all have the same thing and we know that it's all basically the same. But whenever I see price per square foot as a metric used, I always kind of like to bring that up, because a lot of people like to hang their hat on that metric, and it's just a sliver. It's just like salt in the recipe. It's one ingredient.
For sure.
And if you only added salt, it would taste terrible.
Right. And it's what's funny to me too, is I have, I'll deal with realtors that will say that to me.
Yeah.
My house is the price per square foot on this house is really good. To which I say, okay.
That's cool.
I'm not going to argue with them, but at the same time I look at it, I'm like, okay, but again, that's just one piece.
Yep.
It's one piece. Like, you're based on the other houses, your price per square foot might be okay in your mind, but those other houses might be on bigger lots. They might be on a better lot with a view. They might be on all these things, and your house doesn't have all of that.
Exactly.
Therefore, your price per square foot cannot be where their price per square foot is.
Yeah. My favorite is when a buyer will look at a large home, say anything over 3,000 square feet, 4,000 square feet. And they go, oh, it's sold for this price per square foot. And I found a home in the same neighborhood that's 2,400 square feet. Why is it so much higher price per square foot? And I tell them, have you ever heard of Costco? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, when you go to Costco, you save money by buying in bulk, right? So the bigger jar of mayonnaise you buy, the less per ounce it is. Same thing goes for housing. When you buy a huge, huge house, chances are your price per square foot is going to be a little bit lower than a house that's smaller, because there's less square foot to chop it up. And especially in an area like LA, where you're paying for land more than anything else.
Yeah.
The size of the house doesn't have a wildly big difference on the price. For instance, we have a neighborhood here where a 1,200 square foot home could easily sell for 900,000, and a 2,000 square foot home would probably only sell for 1.1 because you're paying for the neighborhood.
Right.
So price per square foot can look crazy.
I mean, right. Location, throw that out. I mean, throw price per square foot out when you're dealing with a location.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because then you've got to look at price per square foot in that location.
Exactly. And that's why you have to, like, you know, it's the full picture of everything that has to be painted, which is why I'm so glad you listed off that laundry list of things that us as real estate professionals evaluate for clients. And it's funny because we evaluate all of those things in about 1 to 2 minutes.
Right. Well, I mean, it just, this is the other, to your point, right? It's the other thing people look at it like, but Zillow said my house was, or Zillow said the house was. I'm like, but Zillow doesn't know about the finishes in your house. They don't know about anything that you have done that is special.
Yep.
Or not special, by the way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Or the opposite of special, as some people choose to do in their homes.
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, you can't look at that.
Yeah, and Zillow doesn't know, are they building a new community center 2 blocks away that's going to increase your value? Are they building a light rail train station that's going to make commuting a breeze? All of those things, you know, factor in desirability
100%.
of property, and desirability is directly equated to the value.
Right. Well, I want to talk to you about, today was a busy day in news when it comes to like just, well, a lot of things. Yesterday, all the tariffs were announced. And I think a lot of people were wondering what was going to happen today with interest rates. And then we had the unemployment rate that came out today. And so the unemployment rate it rose from 4.1 to 4.2%, which was a lot lower than they anticipated. They expected it to go up a lot higher.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm going to take a win. I'll take that as a positive.
Yeah, we should definitely.
And then, this, I was telling you earlier, I was watching the interest rates today because I knew some of these things were happening, and I just wanted to see what the interest rates were doing, and the 10-year treasury. So
that's very important when it comes to interest rates.
Which is right. More important, you know, the 10-year treasury, most important for the interest rates. Right.
Yep.
So it was very interesting. So earlier in the day, probably around 1 o'clock, something like that, I looked. And the 30-year interest rate, I wrote this down because I wanted to make note for today, for now, was 6.55%. The 10-year treasury at that point was under 4. It was at 3.94.
Which I don't know. I mean, the last time we were sub 4 would probably have to be before the pandemic, or maybe during the first few months during the pandemic, when we were like, we don't know what's going to happen. So loosen it all up. So it 5 years more or less.
I know. So I was like, wow. That dropped pretty significantly, because I think yesterday it was 4.2.
It was. Yeah.
And then I looked when it closed, and rates closed at 6.6%, and the 10-year treasury went at 4.0 something. Which,
you know, that's not uncommon in the market, for, you know, as the day goes on, for traders to kind of get back under their feet. You know, it's so funny because for being a group of cutthroat business people, you know, these Wall Street investors that are always trying to figure out the best play for, you know, to make a little bit more money, they get spooked very easily, and they're very emotional, very emotional. I mean, I've made this analogy before, and on my channel, I make it all the time. You know, people are like, the American people are like a pack of deer, right? Like, they're very skittish. And if you make any sudden movements, they run away, they freak out, right? I think investors are even more flighty, because even if you just whisper, hey, something might happen, they're like, sell, buy, trade, something else, get out. Nobody wants to be responsible for losing their company's money, right? That's how you get fired.
They don't like change.
They don't like change. They don't like change, and they don't like uncertainty, right?
Right.
And so early in the day, when they're trying to absorb how is this going to affect, as they move later in the day, they realize, oh wait, you know what? We can offset it with this, or we can look here for an investment, or whatever. And that is why a lot of the times towards the end of the day, things kind of pick back up a little bit and tend to trend upward. But, you know, it's always anybody's guess what's going to happen.
I know. So that's exactly this. So I wanted to look at this. So rate rally reverses, but focus on bigger picture. So it says this week is ending with the average top tier 30-year fixed mortgage rate at its lowest level since early October 2024. The only way to be disappointed about that would be to focus on the fact that rates were even lower this morning. Rates fell sharply due to the market's ongoing reaction to Wednesday's tariff announcements, and especially due to China's announcement of a retaliatory tariff overnight. Bonds, which dictate rates, were at their strongest level right at the start of the domestic trading and progressively erased gains. Why? There are several ways to make the case for Friday's rate reversal. These include, but are not limited to, 3 key events: a reasonably strong job market, news that Vietnam would lower tariffs on the U.S., which acted as proof of concept, suggesting that tariffs could end up being less onerous than feared, Fed Chair Powell expressing renewed concern over the inflationary impact of tariffs, as opposed to offering an indication that the Fed would be eager to cut rates in response to economic turmoil. In addition to those actual nuts and bolts, one could also consider that rates quite simply covered a ton of ground this week relative to their recent tendencies, and it's not unheard of for traders to circle the wagons on a Friday afternoon, i.e. to push back slightly on the prevailing momentum. Again, the average rate is still as low as it's been since October. If there's anything to be less than enthusiastic about, it's the fact that the nature of this motivation means that volatility remains a distinct risk, for better or worse.
Man, imagine being that person out there that it just got into contract on their home. Today's Friday. Maybe they got an offer accepted on Monday or Tuesday, and their lender just called them and said, you just got locked in at 6.5%.
I know.
Imagine being that. And just not but a week or two ago, people were like 6.8, 6.9.
I know.
And again, obviously if you're watching a real estate live stream with the two of us on a Friday afternoon, you're probably pretty tuned in. But the difference between 0.1% on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage could be huge, especially depending on your loan amount.
Right.
So imagine just being that person that's like, I got 6.5%, which is, smokes everyone for a non buy down rate loan.
Right.
I mean, that's amazing.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens next with all of this. But again, I just don't see, I don't think there's a prediction to what's going to happen.
No, we were talking about this, backstage before we fired up the live stream, and I don't see at this point how anyone could make any type of educated prediction or guess with any type of direction other than I just feel like, it's just too early on. And to your point, Sean, people don't like uncertainty, and that is what we're full of right now. And there's no getting around it. There's no. This is an economic. Experiment's probably not the right word, but I can't find a better one. But this economic experiment is one where we won't know the results for 8 months, 12 months, 24 months. Yeah. We're not going to know how it shakes out. And that causes uncertainty for people. And
I think we might see some things shake out sooner, but not everything.
Right.
I think a lot of things have time.
Yeah. And maybe what happens, maybe what does shake out sooner is like the stuff that we read with Vietnam, maybe, other countries like Vietnam going, okay, wait a minute, let's talk about this before we just trade war each other to death.
Right.
Let's have a conversation. And my gut says that, this is just a guess, purely guess. I don't think that's going to happen, but it very well could. And maybe to that article's point, maybe it is one of these things where all of a sudden 6 months from now, a couple of countries have said, you know what? If you give up, we'll give up. Mm-hmm. If you're cool, we'll be cool. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, maybe this administration will have early success, and maybe it will work exactly right. No, we can't know. And there's just so much uncertainty, and everything is so new right now that it would be ill-advised to try to anticipate what the outcome could be.
Right. And that's, I think for people that are looking at housing, and I say this over and over and over again, if you are thinking that you're going to buy and you're going to be in a place for 5 to 7 years, it's not a bad time to buy, as long as you can afford it.
Yep.
Like, don't stretch yourself, but as long as you can afford it. If you're not going to stay for that long and you're going to, you think you might only be someplace for 3 years, don't buy.
No, exactly right.
Rent.
And you know what's interesting is, you know, in that first article, I think it was the first one where we talked about the couple that put in all those offers and they were just not getting traction. They decided themselves, you know what, we can't get an offer accepted. We're trying to give up people $161,000 over the asking price, still won't take it. And now we have some more uncertainty with the economic market, with tariffs and all of this stuff. And, you know, there was a blurb about, oh, maybe we'll just continue to rent. And I can really understand that person's mindset in that. They're probably exhausted, right?
Of course. I mean,
they're probably a little discouraged, right? And they just don't feel confident. But in that same market where we're looking at, they tried to buy a house $161,000 over the asking price. They still couldn't. Appreciation in the Northeast is going to continue at a pretty good clip at that rate. In 2 years, how much is that house going to be that they're going to want to buy?
Yeah.
You know, it's such a double-edged sword, especially in markets that remain hot.
Yeah. This is where me and my wife were with our purchase. We close next week. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
That fast to feel amazing.
That's phenomenal.
Good job. Where did you buy? I'm curious.
And is this your first home? That's
that's a good one.
Is it your first home? And where did you buy?
And where did you buy? Yeah, I know. It's funny because I have clients all the time that when we're in the contract process and everything's moving along, and it's a frustrating process. It can be. I mean, it's frustrating and it's a lot, and you know, all of that. And they will say to me all the time, they're like, I do not know how you do this every single day. I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, you know, I've been doing it for so long that, you know, I have that ability to anticipate. I mean, there's still things that come up that I'm like, okay, this is new. But you just kind of have that ability to anticipate things and help set expectations and hopefully keep people as calm as possible through the process.
That's exactly right. And just like anything else, you know, you sometimes, you know, when you're not being good and you're participating in brain rot on TikTok or Instagram, you're just scrolling, right? You're like, it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm just in the zone. I'm zoning out. And you come across one of these videos of like one of these workers that is like, you know, in a factory and he's supposed to assemble these two pieces and he's just doing it without even thinking. Just boom, 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 boom. That's how we are with transactions. And a lot of people don't realize that, you know, if you just do something long enough, it just becomes second nature. And what you said is exactly right. That anticipation and managing expectations of this is what's probably going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, this is how we'll handle it.
Right. Is
huge. And that's why the guidance of a true professional, not just in real estate industry, is extremely valuable.
It is. I mean, I'm always grateful at the end. I'm grateful at the end when everything goes well, you know, not grateful because it's always crazy. I mean, you get so locked in with this person, you know, and then it ends and then you kind of have a conversation every once in a while. And it's interesting. I always touch base with my clients. They're like, oh my gosh, we haven't seen you in forever. It's great. Yeah. So, I mean, right now we are I'm looking to make sure I got all my notes here. We are in for kind of a weird time. There was, I know what I wanted to look at this one other article. This is about the housing market power shift, which if you live in Arizona, I'm sorry to say, I just want to go down to some of these. So this is nationwide. So active U.S. housing inventory for sale, according to realtor.com. So you can just kind of see all these different years and where we were 2021, 2020, 22. I mean, this is 2022. Look at this. This started way down here.
And people wonder why there was a huge run up in pricing. Here you go.
No, I know. 23. But then, I mean, look at where 17, 18, and 19 were. They started way up here. So we're not back to the levels at which, you know, it used to be where we used to be. So although our inventory is going up, this is why I tell everybody, I'm like, our prices are not crashing. Could we level out? Could we see some sustainable prices and a little bit of a dip? We could, because, our prices did go up so drastically. However, this is showing you kind of why we're not going to see our prices crash.
Yeah. So and I would say to your area, especially your area, Arizona, Phoenix was it wasn't like pandemic boomtowny like Austin or parts of Florida, but I know people that left California and were like, I'm going to Arizona. And I feel like, especially in a town like yours, but generally in those years of the pandemic, listen, we had 20% price appreciation on average in 2020 and 18% in 2021. Okay. That is completely abnormal, unsustainable. Right. So it would make perfect sense for prices to level off. We need prices to level off. Yeah. It's better for the entire market overall. And this is a great illustration of why prices might level, but they're certainly not going to crash.
Right.
Because we have less homes available and many more people than we did before.
Agreed. Okay. Voltage Studios. First home purchase is 35th Avenue and 101 area. Appraised at purchase price. Very well taken care of. Couple in their 70s. We got 1.5% seller concession, as well as our realtor fees covered. Good job.
Nicely done. See, the buyers having a little bit more of, I won't say the upper hand, but a little bit more leverage, getting 1.5% seller concessions plus your fees covered. That's pretty dang good.
Our average concession price right now, like total cost, is about $10,000. So I'm curious, and you don't have to tell me, Voltage Studios, I'm not asking for money, but I'm curious to see, like, was it right, that 1.5% seller concession, was it close to $10,000? So it'll be interesting. So hi, Jim. I love that you watch all the time. The 2020s have given us a false perspective on mortgage rates, 100%. If you exclude 2020 and 2022, we are currently in the lower range historically. I couldn't agree more. It's that hard thing of that we went through that for so long, and everybody, right? Everybody got that rate, that now when people are looking at the higher rate, they're like, but I could have had. I'm like, but did you buy then?
Yeah, it's pointless. It's moot. If it's like people saying, "Oh, I've made a ton of money in the stock market, but I'm still holding my stock. I haven't sold it.
You haven't made any money.
You made nothing." It's so true, because for the longest time, Sean, we were bumping along at 5%, 4.8, 5.2, 5.5 for a long time. I mean, from the GFC till about 2020. And nobody batted an eye. Everybody was fine with it, and then they dropped to 2%, 2.5%, depending on the type of mortgage product you got. But, humans typically tend to remember, stuff that is, that stands out, right? And having an extremely low mortgage rate or an opportunity to get one is a rarity. And now everybody's going to cling to that. Totally. I remember when rates were, I could have 3%, or I got 3%. Now I'm getting 6.5. 6.5 is nothing to shy about, No. I do understand that consumers are saying, well, it's 6.5 and the prices are high.
Right.
I get it. I understand that. But yeah, Jim makes a good point that definitely the COVID era, the unicorn years of 2020 through 2022 certainly have skewed people's perspective a little bit.
100%. I say this all the time. My husband and my first house that we bought, our interest rate was at 7%. And my father-in-law looked at us and said, lock that rate today. You will never see rates that low again, ever. Lock it up. And I mean, it was just, he was so adamant. And we were like, okay. I mean, we were young and, and I mean, and now we're at 7. And again, the house price was very different.
But incomes are also different too.
I was just going to say that income is very different as well.
So,
yeah. So Voltage Studio says we asked for 3%, settled on 1.5. Yeah. About 8,000.
Plus the 2K. So that's 10.
Yeah. Yeah. But of the things that they corrected after the inspection, we were looking for about 8+ months, and the home checked all the boxes for us. Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
Huge congrats. That's excellent.
Totally. Yeah.
That is amazing.
It's a process. It is. And it's so hard. Especially right now. And this is, kind of goes back to what we've been talking, or like the title of this, what I was talking about the whole time. Inventory has gone up, which in essence, you would think makes it it's so much better and easier for the buyers. Unfortunately, right now, it's just not.
Yeah. No, it's not.
It doesn't make it easier. It's not been easier for buyers.
And hopefully the pop in inventory will help ease it a little bit. But like we were just talking about, there's so many things happening at such a high speed right now. Mm-hmm. It's really, really, really difficult to anticipate.
I know it. It's crazy, but I hope that, well, this is what I say. If you're a buyer out there, don't lose hope, because it does happen. It will happen. You just have to be patient. And I think that's the hard part, because I think in the grand scheme of things and in human nature, we are not patient by nature.
Right.
And I think that with the rate volatility as well, it makes you feel really, really anxious, because you're like, but the rate was just at 6.5 and now it's at 7. And now if I go, and then, but everything will happen. This is that's the only thing that I can say. I know that sounds kind of pie in the sky, but it will all happen, and it will happen when it's supposed to, and the right house will happen for you. And whenever I have a buyer that doesn't get the house that they thought that they wanted, but they end up getting another house, they always look at me and say, I am so glad that I didn't get that other house, because I like this one so much better.
100%. I have the same thing. I tell people the same time. It's so cliche, but show people 6, 7, 8 homes they offer on 6, 7, 8 homes. They get home number 9. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, Joe, I'm meant to be here. Check in a year later. This is where I'm supposed to be. Yeah. I have no regrets about anything else. I'm a firm believer, as cliche as it is, where the home you end up in is the one you're meant to be in.
Totally.
It's stupid, but it's so true.
Totally. So Sandy's asking Joe, how is the Orange County, California market doing, specifically South OC, buyers or sellers market?
Yeah, that's a good question. As a caveat, I'm more of an LA County agent, but I'm familiar with OC. I've sold and purchased in the OC before. And I will tell you, Sandy, that I would be flabbergasted ever to see the day where the OC is not a seller's market. It's just so coveted. It's so beautiful. It's the schools are excellent. There are obviously some areas of Orange County that are slightly less desirable. Areas of Santa Ana, some areas of Anaheim, things like that could afford a little bit more softer pricing. But in general, Orange County is not a very big area, especially in comparison to Los Angeles County and Riverside County and San Diego County, right next to it. So overall in Orange County, things still seem to be moving very, very quickly, just because of the desirability of the area. Plus, there's a lot of high earners and high income there. So the housing prices, well, I don't want to say they're more affordable. They're certainly not, but people have the means to pay for them. So all in all, I would say that it still is a seller's market. In fact, I had someone come to me with a $600,000 budget wanting to be in Orange County, and they knew that they were going to buy a condo. And I said, I'm sorry, you really need to find an agent in the very local area that you're looking, because at that price point, it's going to be a real dogfight. And you need an agent out there that is like mega in tune. And that's just not my specialty. So Orange County is still moving quite well. I would definitely still say it's a seller's market, but it's not 2021 anymore. It's not 2020 anymore, like we've been talking about. So if you are a seller in that market, it doesn't mean that you can just ask some crazy number and get it. You still need to rely on closed comps in order to guide your pricing.
Jim, I grew up in Old Town Orange, 2 blocks from the Circle. I don't know if I could afford to move back there. Haha. Do you know where that is?
I do. Yeah. The Orange is a nice city. Yeah. The Circle is a kind of a hip spot there. And yeah, it's expensive. Now, I mean, it's even a basic 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,600 square foot home in Anaheim, in a decent area of Anaheim, which again is not like Newport Beach or Laguna Niguel or Laguna Beach. That's even going to be like $900K now, $950 for something cute and quaint. It's expensive.
My stepdad grew up in Pasadena, the Pasadena kind of area. Mm-hmm. He's 93. This was years ago. He didn't work a lot on computers, but he got on a computer and got on, I think, to Zillow, and called me. And he said, something's wrong. And I said, what's going on? He said, I just looked up the house I grew up in. I looked up the address, and do you have any idea how expensive it is? And he told me, and he said, Sean, this house is like 1,200 square feet. And it was like $900,000.
Oh yeah.
And I think this was like 15 or 18 years ago.
I believe it. I believe it. Now in the Pasadena area, $1 million will get you a 2-bed, 1-bath, 1,000-foot home that needs a complete renovation.
That's so, yeah.
So that's why I get a lot of clients out my way, because I'm only about 25, 30 minutes east of Pasadena.
Mm-hmm.
And for that same $1 million, you can get a very nice home. I mean, it's not going to be gargantuan, but it'll be a 3.2, 4.2, 18 to 2,000 square feet, 1,800, 2,000 square feet. And the public schools are better.
Yeah.
Taxes are the same. And it's just a better bang for the buck. So we get a lot of people now that are like, I'm not even going to try in the Pasadena area because it's just so expensive. I want the quality of life and the bang for the buck out here.
Sure. Well, that's the thing. I think people go where, if the drive is another 10 minutes, I mean, in California, 10 minutes is nothing.
Yeah. Everything's 10 minutes away. We drive everywhere.
I mean, to add to your drive by 10 minutes, that's nothing versus like having to drive an extra hour, which can often happen.
And especially if it's to save $200K.
Right. Totally. Well, so all in all, I think if you're a buyer, hang in there. I mean, I think there's going to be some things that are shifting around. I think that there is opportunity out there. I will say that. I've got a client or an agent right now that keeps calling me on a house that I showed my client, and he's been super busy and can't really make up his mind. Or not make up his mind, but he just has been busy, and we haven't been able to focus on it a little bit. And he just said to me today, he called me and he said, just if he wants to make an offer, just tell him that don't worry, he's not going to offend anybody. So, I mean, I'm hearing a little bit more of that right now with some people.
And that's a great tip to bring up. If you're a buyer out there and you see something you like, just make an offer.
I know.
Just make an offer, because you don't know what's going to happen. And you don't know what it's like. If that house has been on the market for more than 14 days, let it rip, baby. Let it go. There's no harm in making the offer. The worst that happens is your life stays the exact same as it is today.
Well, right. The worst thing they say is no.
Yeah. Right? And nothing changes, and you're still house hunting. You're still, living in the same spot. Right. So
I usually try to get some info, some intel before we do that. But I mean, oftentimes it's, here's what we know. The house hasn't sold.
Yep.
If you like it, we make an offer. If you're okay with it, Yep. And they'll say, I don't want to offend. And I'm like, you can't always think about that.
Business.
It is. I mean, you got to take the shot, because you never know what's on the other side sometimes. Yeah. And sometimes I had a client the end of last year. We made an offer on a house. It was lower. We made the offer lower than I thought we should have, but I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. They did not even counter. They accepted it.
I had that happen in 2022.
Yeah.
The house was 1.2. Told my clients, I looked at all the comps. I said, hey, I think they're about 100, 110 over on this. And they said, okay, Joe, we trust you. Let's do 1.1. And I was like, okay. I didn't think you'd just go for it. So we write up the offer, submit it. And I told the agent, I said, listen, I understand. It's just a starting place. Just respond with something.
Right.
Try to do the dance. He goes, yeah, no, we get it. We get an email back that says, we're going to accept your offer. You just have to buy the house as is. And we're like, okay,
right,
great. If you're going to let it go for $100K under your asking price, and you're not going to negotiate with us, which at that point, I'm my clients, this is a great deal now. This is exactly what you should buy. Right. And there's no other offers. You got to take this deal.
Right.
And they did. And they're like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And because that house was so overpriced, it kept a lot of the competition away. But they were the ones that were like, we're not going to be deterred.
Right.
So we're going to submit the offer.
Right.
And we're going to see what happens. And they're in that house right now.
Yeah. It's awesome. I know. Well, perfect. Well, everybody, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday. Have a good one. Thanks, Joe.